nothing.
Oh yeah. Bacchus?
Why doesn't anybody ever want to meet Ringo?
Hey dudes, Dalek44 here. I need no introduction, but I got my name. Well, 2016 is over, and it's now 2017. So let's talk about something that I grew up with. Cartoons. Yes, for years cartoons have bringing children of all ages joy, and even joy to adults of all ages. And for kids in the 90s and early 2000s, we were introduced to certain types of cartoons. Cartoons that came out in those years we were born, and the cartoons that came out before our time. But whatever the cartoon was, we were all entertained by it. Whether it be cartoons on Cartoon Network, or other channels such as CITV, Nickelodeon, the Disney Channel, and many others. And one cartoon that I most recently got reintroduced to after all these years was about a fat orange cat who liked kicking garbage cans about. A cat we all know as Heathcliff.
Heathcliff, Heathcliff, no one should terrify their neighborhood, but Heathcliff just won't be undone, playing pranks on everyone.
Before I talk about the Heathcliff cartoon I grew up with, I feel I should go through its history really quick. In 1973, an American comic strip called Heathcliff was created by George Gately. It featured the title character, a wisecracking cat. The comic strip is now being written and drawn by Gately's nephew, Peter Gallagher. This cartoon strip was so popular that Ruby Spear Productions decided to create a Saturday morning animated series based on the strip called Heathcliff and Dingbat, and then the second season was called Heathcliff and Marmaduke. And now we come to the cartoon show that I grew up with, Heathcliff in 1984. Heathcliff, or as some other people would know it as, Heathcliff and the Cadillac Cats, is a French and American animated television series created by Dick Entertainment, who brought us many other cartoons such as the Sonic the Hedgehog cartoons, the Super Mario Brothers cartoons, Inspector Gadget, Dennis the Menace, and many others. Now keep in mind, I haven't seen Heathcliff in over 20 years, so now that I'm older, is it really as good as I remember it to be? Well, let's dig right into the bottom of the garbage can and find out. Each episode of the show will show us all the antics of our favourite orange troublemaking cat Heathcliff, voiced by Mel Blanc. Yep, the Mel Blanc, the man of 1,000 voices, and gave us the voices of the Looney Tunes for generations until his dearly departing.
What a pretty sight.
Heathcliff is a street cat who loves to fight anyone but will not fight girls. He would also lie, cheat, and steal to get himself some food. But beneath it all, he is a good guy. He's always quick thinking and a trickster. So he's basically the kind of cartoon character who seems bad on the outside but does have a good heart on the inside. So Heathcliff's basically the kind of cat who's bad on the outside but does have a good heart, as is shown in quite a few episodes. He's a bad pussycat, but not that bad. He does his antics in such a way that you can't help but love him, which makes him a likeable character.
I come from a long line of bad pussycats.
He lives with his owner, Iggy Nutmeg, who lives with his grandparents since his real parents refused to take any responsibility for him. And that's a really good point for this show. It's kind of like when Huey, Dewey and Louie were dumped with their uncle Donald Duck and then to their great uncle Scrooge McDuck. I mean, where the hell did Iggy's parents go all this time?
They're on sabbatical.
Iggy sometimes takes Heathcliff to strange places and new locations for adventures. Unlike pretty much everyone in the neighbourhood, Iggy doesn't always approve of Heathcliff's antics, but he always counts on his cat to help get him out of trouble whenever he needs it. And they've lived with Grandma and Grandpa Nutmeg. Grandpa, who often shows dislike to Heathcliff, but Iggy and Grandma usually come to Heathcliff's defence, which Grandpa doesn't really like too much. Grandma cooks a lot and Heathcliff steals her food. Grandma, like Iggy and Marcy, think Heathcliff is an angel, much to Grandpa's dismay.
He'll just get into trouble, as usual.
Heathcliff is a good cat.
Sometimes I think you love that rascal more than you love me.
Then there's Marcy, a small girl who lived in the same neighbourhood as Iggy's family. Marcy always sees the best in Heathcliff and thought he was a little angel. She also loves to have Heathcliff ride in her baby doll carriage, which for the most part Heathcliff is more than happy to oblige, especially if it means getting some fish from the fish store. Then there's Heathcliff's love interest Sonia, a fluffy white Persian cat who wears a pink collar. Heathcliff is always trying to win Sonia over, although generally she is not usually too impressed with Heathcliff's antics, as she is a far classier type of cat. Sonia would often date other male cats that Heathcliff would have to fight, but always ends up hanging out and reconciling with Heathcliff. Sonia's character in the show is basically the typical girlfriend who falls in love with other guys and then falls back in love with the original boyfriend as soon as she finds out the truth about the phony. I think that was a classic 80s trope at the time. Yeah, this is basically what some female characters would have done in the 80s and 90s. Being the girlfriend of the main character, falling in love with another guy who seems to have more to offer than the other guy, but then it turns out that they're a phony and the girlfriend always goes back to the boyfriend. Yeah, it's an old-fashioned cliche, but it works to its advantage in this show. Even though Sonia sometimes dates other cats, she really truly does love Heathcliff.
Oh, Heathcliff, you're wonderful.
Yeah, don't I know it?
You sure know how to take care of a girl. You're so talented, Heathcliff. You feel feverish. To me, you'll always be a star.
Really?
Really.
You know, Sonia, I have to admit, you have excellent taste.
And it was proven in an episode where Heathcliff was suffering from amnesia. She loved him so much that she was willing to jump off a roof just to make him get his memory back.
I can't endure another day without my Heathcliff. Goodbye, cruel world.
That's more convincing than Hayden Christensen's performance in Star Wars.
I can't endure another day without my Heathcliff.
You brought him here to kill me.
Goodbye, cruel world.
They're like animals, and I slaughtered them like animals.
And probably the closest thing to a nemesis that Heathcliff has, Spike the Bulldog, is nowhere near as clever as Heathcliff, all brawn and no brains. Surprised? But despite being strong, he fears Heathcliff and was never able to overcome Heathcliff's trickery. Spike is owned by a neighbourhood bully called Muggsy. Heathcliff is able to handle both of them when necessary. And there's various other characters that are around the neighbourhood, like the milkman, the fish salesman, various other residents of the city. And then there's Heathcliff's father, Pop, an orange cat who is normally in and out of prison. And a lot of Heathcliff's adventures were also joined up by the Cadillac Cats, Hector, Wordsworth and Mungo. Hector sometimes wanted to be the leader of the neighbourhood. He's insecure and has no background on his origin. His colours are brown, beige and dark brown. Hector wears a headband, beige jumpsuit and a necktie. There's Wordsworth, the white cat on roller skates, speaks in rhyme and always wears a yellow personal cassette player.
Mungo's living like a king without having to pay a thing.
Has Wordsworth ever thought about entering a rhyming contest? I bet he and Gruntilda would have a tiebreaker.
Welcome back to Make That Rhyme, okay? The game show where we take two contestants and see if they can make any word that we say rhyme, okay? When we last left today's contestants, Wordsworth the Alley Cat was in the lead with an amazing 38 points, while Gruntilda, Wicked Witch of Spiral Mountain, is in last place with an astounding negative 100 points, okay? If either one of them can rhyme this last word, they'll get the jackpot of today, okay? Now, the last word to rhyme is easy. Wordsworth, you want me to rhyme easy? Why, that's easy peasy lemon squeezy. Well, that's a very good way to rhyme easy, okay? But let's see if Grunty can do any better. I'm sorry, Miss Gruntilda. I didn't understand a word you just said there, okay? No, I still didn't catch any of that, sorry. Okay. Well, I'm afraid I can't read any subtitles, okay? So, since you didn't really make a rhyme and just a bunch of noises, we're gonna make Wordsworth the winner, okay?
And then there's Mungo, big, clumsy, and not the sharpest tool in the box, as they say. He is a large cat with a unique purple, brown, grey fur that wears a red tank top and matching red beanie. The show ran on for 2 seasons, airing in 1984 and ended in 1988. It was said in an interview by Donna Christie, the voice of Biggie, that the series didn't continue because of Mel Blanc's failing health. So if the show did continue, they would have had the difficult challenge of finding someone as good as Mel Blanc. And I think it's a good thing that the show ended when it did. Because, let's be honest, Mel Blanc's the man of 1,000 voices, and nobody's as good as him. So if anybody else tried to imitate Mel Blanc's voice in the show, then it really would have shown. Though one of the actors who currently voices the Looney Tunes since Mel Blanc's death may not have been a bad choice, then it would have been noticeable really quick. The music for the show was written by Shuki Levy and Chaim Saban.
What?
Yep, the Chaim Saban, the man who created Power Rangers. Even when I found out, I was amazed to find out that Chaim Saban worked on music before he worked on Power Rangers. That's a very interesting background for the creator of one of the greatest shows of all time. The animation for this show was outsourced to many Japanese, Taiwanese and Korean studios including TMS, Studio Koromi, Wang Film, Cuckoo's Nest, Mushi, Araki and others for the first season before Dick utilised their own private Japanese studio to avoid paying other companies, which would explain the difference in animation in various episodes. Like you see one episode of the show, it'd have one style of animation, you'd see another episode it would have another style, and so on and so forth. So it's kind of like when other shows after this, like Tiny Toon Adventures and Animaniacs were made, animated by different companies and then sent back to the major studio. Yeah, this cartoon is cliched, yeah, it's got loads of 80s things that were around at the time, but it's still quite enjoyable years later now that I'm older. And the show was so popular that in 1986 they made a movie called Heathcliff the Movie. In the film, Heathcliff's nephews sit down on a rainy day feeling bored until they realise that they have to sit through Heathcliff going through his memory book to tell them memories of all the things he did when he was younger. And it's basically just stock footage of previous cartoons. Though to its credit, it is some of the funny and more popular cartoons from the show. As a kid, it's entertaining enough, but when you look back at it years later as an adult, it is just an hour-and-a-half clip show. Kind of like what the original Looney Tunes movies did, like the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner movie to Daffy Duck's Quackbusters. Not really that bad, hell I'd even say it's really entertaining. But it's not exactly what I would call a big movie. Like these days when you make a movie based off of a TV show or anything, then you normally expect it to have a really big story. But this must have been made around the time when combination movies were really popular, like back when the Looney Tunes movies were created. So it must have been popular for the time, but these days it would just be seen as a really big clip show. But as really big clip shows go, it's really entertaining. It's got some of the best cartoons in the show, and it's really entertaining for kids, and I guess some adults would get some entertainment from it too. Though there are some problems with the movie besides it being a really big clip show. Like one is the music and the sound effects. Now to its credit, it's still music and sound effects from the show, but it's not always the same music and sound effects from the original episodes. It was obvious that they kept the original recordings for the episodes, but for a lot of the scenes, they actually changed some of the music and the sound effects in these episodes that they showed. And I don't get why they did that. I mean, the music and the sound effects was fine the way it was, but now we gotta hear new music and sound effects in this movie? Why? There's also the fact that none of the other characters appear in this movie outside of the stock footage. Well, except for Spike in one scene. Spike shows up to try and steal the spotlight from Heathcliff, but of course gets beaten up. But there could have been opportunities for the other characters to show up. Like, I've always wondered where the hell the Nutmegs were all this time in the movie. My guess is they must have gone out somewhere where animals weren't allowed in. And why the hell didn't Sonia appear in one or two scenes? I mean, wouldn't it have been nice if she'd have come in to see Heathcliff and then she joined in on him telling his nephews about all the adventures he had? I mean, come on guys, if you put Spike in one scene, couldn't you have had one or two of the other characters in another scene? But all that aside, it is entertaining for kids, and I suppose some adults might get some entertainment from it too. And that was Heathcliff. Not exactly the masterpiece I remember it to be, but still a very entertaining show if you want to have some coffee.
Don't leave me.
Wait, what the hell? Oh, silly me, I forgot about this one. Every episode would start off with a Heathcliff cartoon and then wrap up with a Cadillac Cats cartoon, aka Cats and Company. This was the sort of thing that they used to do with certain cartoons like Dastardly and Muttley, where they had Magnificent Muttley, just to give the show a bit more variety. It was about the three cats Hector, Wordsworth and Mungo that played alongside Heathcliff when their leader Riffraff wasn't around. In this portion of the show, the three cats would live in a junkyard and drive a very cool Cadillac which could transform into an RV and boat. In this part of the show, Hector, Wordsworth and Mungo would be led by their boss Riffraff, who lives in a trashed airplane on top of a jump pile while using a trap door for an exit. He is a small brown cat with a large white cap. And these four cats would be joined by the other characters, including Cleo, Riffraff's love interest. She lives in a musical instrument shop with Bush the dog. She had an 80s hairstyle and leg warmers, and she's the face of a lot of furries in the 80s. And I won't go into too much details about the furries, but let's just say she's a fan favourite for a lot of people out there. For reasons that I don't really wish to talk about right now. There was also Leroy the guard dog, who lives in the junkyard with the Cadillac Cats, and he would often make their days a living hell whenever he wanted to do so. Then there was Bush, a loyal sheepdog that lived with Cleo in the music shop. Unfortunately, due to his bushy hairdo, most of the time when Riffraff could break into taking Cleo out, Bush would end up running into various musical instruments trying to stop him. So he's basically another dim-witted character. Each episode of the Cadillac Cats cartoons was basically the four cats getting into all sorts of scrapes, like meeting a mad scientist, getting into rivalries with other cats and possibly dogs as well, and even going on camping trips and getting wound up with trying to catch a Bigfoot. And there are some Riffraff cartoons that would later on be contradicted in Heathcliff cartoons in Season 2. Like one episode of the Riffraff cartoons had Riffraff lying to his mother saying that he lived in a big mansion. Then in Season 2, Heathcliff did exactly the same thing with his mother. So yeah, kind of recycled writing, but they're both pretty entertaining in their own way. So yeah, the Cadillac Cats cartoons would often be similar to Heathcliff cartoons, but they were still entertaining. Like Heathcliff, this had well-written characters, well-written stories for the time, and it's got some entertaining voice actors as well. Unlike all other Dick Entertainment cartoons in the 80s and early 90s, this one wouldn't be complete without its learning segments at the end. Each episode of the show would always end with a pet safety tip, with Heathcliff telling us the best way to look after our pets. Much like how a lot of TV shows like Inspector Gadget and Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog would often give us lifelong lessons like don't smoke and all that stuff. But in this one, it's about pet safety tips. And that's a really nice change from all the other safety stuff that we used to get in cartoons. Especially for people who are watching this who have pets of their own. Heathcliff is one of the most popular comic strips of its time, and it's still going on today. There's even been rumours of a CGI live-action movie adaptation of Heathcliff starring Frank Welker as Heathcliff. But whether these rumours are true or not, we'll have to wait and see. And that was Heathcliff and the Cadillac Cats, which is his other name. And 20 years later, it's not exactly the masterpiece I remember it to be, but it's still entertaining and worth a good laugh if you want some comedy every once in a while. Heathcliff was a very entertaining cartoon in the 80s. It had memorable characters, one of them being voiced by Mel Blanc himself, very entertaining stories for the time, and some pretty decent animation for the 80s, with some animation errors as you'd expect from cartoons at that time. So for me, Heathcliff, or Heathcliff and the Cadillac Cats, whatever you want to call it, is one of the most entertaining cartoons of its time. It was funny, cheesy, and entertaining for all ages. There's even some adults out there who still have a soft spot for the cartoon, and most of them, like myself, grew up with that cartoon. So if you haven't seen this cartoon yet, I'd say go check it out, and show it to your kids if you have some. They'll be entertained by this for many years like I was. I hope you're all enjoying 2017 so far, and look out for more reviews and animated videos very soon. I'm Dalek44, and I'll see you next time, folks.
The game will reign supreme, and no one can deny. They'll make them history, and always have an alibi. So join in the jubilee. The cats are great, they'll all agree. Heathcliff, no one should terrify their neighborhood.
I come from a long line of red pussycats